Alright, so as promised, and for the joy of Ratchet, let's go to the beach resort of Planet Pokitaru.
No wonder Clank hates it there, though. All that water, he'll rust.
To be fair, no, it doesn't particularly care about that.
Eh.
As showcased in the previous planet, you know, they can both go underwater pretty normally. I wanted to
For
say...
gameplay ease, of course.
Yeah, I have to say though, again, for an Insomniac Skybox, this is clearly still a step down compared to Spyro. I get it that those games, Skyboxes, were probably done under some sort of acid trip, but, you know, they were pretty.
I will say, this is
Alright.
probably Insomniac starting to ease a bit more towards slightly realism. I'm treading carefully with that because this is still a space globe-tropping thing, but you can tell that, you know, the Skybox is definitely more a hint towards the realistic, whereas Spyro was full-on fantasy.
And I'm partially joking also because, you know, we have seen planets with exotic, you know, skyboxes previously, and we will see in the future. It's just that this is supposed to be beach planet, so of course they do kind of that, you know.
Blue skies, nice horizons. So, does anyone here love going to the beach?
I used to, but I don't really go anymore because it bores me.
I'll admit, like, unless I'm surfing or boogie boarding, the beach is kind of so-and-so for me.
Every year it's the same thing, so eventually I got tired because it's always the same thing every year. So
my mother is from a coastal town, so I was practically required to go there every summer up until, you know, I decided what to do with my summer vacations.
So you were fan of the beach or not?
Oh, so were you like Luca and Alberto?
No. Well, you have to. Okay, I think I did mention when we were watching the movie on our own. That movie is set on the western side, coast side, you know, which is the more technically the more pretty, with the more clean, you know, type of, you know, part of the Mediterranean Sea with the better beaches, you know. My mother is unfortunately from the Adriatic, on the east coast side, and I have no shame in actually saying it. It's shit. It really is shit. It's
toxic
so
waters and all that.
Thank God no. But you know, it gives a good point to Anakin's rant about sand for starters. You know.
Oh God.
It's so full of sand. Every time you go to the beach there, you will always end up with sand all over your body, including places where it shouldn't actually be. The water is constantly murky, and there's a very good chance that while you're actually trying to actually, you know, step into the water without having to swim early, you will step on a crab when you start pinching your feet. So again, sure. On the plus side, it's very unlikely there to be jellyfishes, so at the very least you don't run the risk into having, you know, poisonous bites. But it's still not a very good place to go to actually, you know, swimming, unless you actually live there. In that case, it's understandable.
Yeah, I've had some unfortunate scrapes with jellyfish too. Like, I know Anakin's rant gets memed on, but the boy did have a point. Sand can be annoying if you're not into that stuff.
You also have to remember, Jova, the reason people meme about that because it's, as per tradition, George Lucas oversimplifying his life as a lake condensed to I just hate the, you know, the physiology of this planet.
I thought people memed on it because that was also meant to be a profession of love. Jesus Christ.
Again, many factors. Anyway, more hacking. My point being, much like with many other things, like going to a con, these days to me it's not so much the location in itself, but, you know, if I can actually go there for the company of other people more than anything. So
that's fair. Like, I don't necessarily hate going to the beach, but it's kind of like it's if somebody wants me to come with them, essentially. I don't generally go there on my own volition. Especially since there's a lot of chance that there may be some unfortunate company lurking in the water, which some people don't seem to realize.
Mind you, it's understandable if you actually come, you know, hail from a place that naturally did not have the, beaches, or it's up in the north, so it's not something that you might be used to actually, go to swim in on a hot day, on a beach. Hence why a lot of people from the aforementioned place on the Adriatic tend to be mostly tourists from Germany, and more recently actually from the Netherlands. Ever since last year I counted quite a lot of people actually going there by car, traveling by car, doing basically the entirety of the central of Europe, each by car, to get there, to get to the beaches. So, I mean, it's their choice, but I commend the effort, I guess.
Can't complain too much about our beaches up here, though thankfully our beaches don't seem to be as dangerous as some of the stuff going down in Australia and Florida. Are pretty much our equivalent to Australia, because Jesus Christ, the Florida man memes kind of have some realism decked into just what you have to be made of to survive down in Florida. Wow, provided you're not in the Orlando area.
I don't remember the location, but I remember seeing the documentary once that talked about in some particular places, probably Australia, there is a specific type of fish which hides in the sand in order to protect himself from the predators, as like a spine, that if you actually technically step on that, you inject poison into it with that. It's very nasty.
Okay.
And I'm like, why? Who would go to the beaches that are infested with that?
I guess the idea is that if you're Australian, pretty much everywhere there is filled with dangerous wildlife, so why not enjoy yourself at the beach with just as much dangerous
Speaking of going to the beach, we found one of our local scientists.
Raritanium?
Maybe.
The oceans on this planet are said to be an excellent source of that
You
element.
notice the fact that,
Well,
he's the
All
one
that
that actually was
toxic
chased by the
dumping
shark
has
in the
obscured any
intro.
trace of it. You will find raritanium for me.
No, I will not.
Yeah.
No Jedi mind trick for you.
My latest invention.
Remember, this was
First
2002, so,
intended to use
hot
it to control
riding
minds,
hot
but,
with
well, the only thing
fresh
that got me
memes from
so
the
far is a
prequels.
discount from
You
Gadgetron.
need to improve that
Hey, I could
machine,
use
mate.
that.
Well, I'll trade it for some raritanium.
I believe planet Hoven is a source of that element.
Our long-range sensor.
We got
then.
basically a sensor that detects us for raritanium. Over the course of the series, it will actually change its properties from like a specific object for the story to an actual resources that you can trade off for upgrades. So this actually, if I recall correctly, the item that we acquired, we will actually need it later on, so we'll come back to this.
Ah yes, raritanium. Bit of a
I
step
got some
down
great
from
bargains for you.
primatanium, but definitely not as good as legendaritanium.
I still
but I hear
think,
that if you...
Like,
But I hear it is still more preferable than gotchatanium.
anyway, Dweebs, there you go. That's the decoy. Jesus Christ.
He's in pain.
Yeah,
Capsulating half.
because basically, audience for context, the thumbnail made it look like the cutscenes really took a massive hit in the budget.
Anyway, time to get on with the main quest line for
To
Pokitaru.
him, no.
Well, friend, have I got a deal for you? Since the Blarg began dumping their toxic sludge into our ocean, the wildlife has,
Become ravenous mutants?
yeah, you could say that.
The monsters
All my
have
customers
become a
either
bit
left
more
or
wild
became lunch.
lately.
So I'm
of
closing
course
the
it's
place
bad
down.
for business.
However, I just so happen to have one, count 'em one, O2
So if we
mask.
help, we might get to that oxygen
It's not for
mask.
sale.
But you said
I said I had a deal, and indeed I do. You boys get rid of those Blarg ships, and it's yours. Just escort me to the other end of this resort, and you can use our jet fighter.
Jet fighter, eh? All right.
Huh.
But
Of
you
course
better
every
not try
vacation
to
resort has a
skip us.
jet fighter.
I mean, as you do.
Yeah. Like it's just common sense.
Basically, this is technically an escort mission, but don't worry, it's far less tedious than it is because, the NPC we're escorting is not really the kind that tries to potentially get, endangered, harmed by the local wildlife. So it's more of a matter of, just keep going and the NPC will actually follow you. But despite
It
the
helps
game-
that a lot of the weapons are ranged anyway.
So, thankfully, this is actually a step up from that stupid mission in Spyro 2, where you have to escort the alchemist from the Earth Shaper.
For all Insomniac's occasional flaws, they always seem to learn from their mistakes.
Again, don't worry also about the small islands with crates on them, because, you know, those are all stuff that you can actually return on your own later. You're just following a predetermined path for the sake of, you know, following the mission.
The NPC moves just at the right speed, but you can pretty much do good crowd control before he reaches certain areas.
Oh no, and also but the default speed of the characters in general, you know, is actually good enough. Again, Insomniac understands the traditional logic of old school FPSs where your characters did move fast, you know. So as a result, you know, the dodging capabilities and circle scraping was all in your hands, basically. So if it was a case of, you know, potentially getting hit, it was basically your fault, because the rule of the game is never stand still, you know, unless you're trying to actually do sniping from afar. But, you know, in previous, in old school games, that was more of a rarity than an actual set piece, for example. You know, we will get, over the course of the series, we will get actually, you know, sniping type of weapons, so we will have some occasion like that, but, you know, compared to Resistance, this is actually more fast-paced. So. Also, the fishes, which you would think are the most weak type of enemy, still require quite a bit of firepower to actually go down, if you notice. The flamethrower weapon, you know, cannot actually defeat them until like 2 or 3 hits, and you require at least 1 bomb to actually deal with them from the glove. So, surprisingly. It's also another thing that I didn't mention about, not all of them. The later games will start to introduce this, but most of the games do have a set difficulty. Actually, they don't really have one that you choose, which obviously has its ups and downs. Now it's worth to be noted that aside from a few specific bosses, including, for example, final bosses, the game is fairly easy, and the checkpoint frequency makes sure that, you know, you don't get stuck on a place. And later games, thanks to the upgrade system for both Ratchet and the weapons, will make sure that even if you fail, you keep progressing, so you become naturally better at the game, you know, even if you fail constantly. But, you know, so at the very least, the games are easy by default, but it's that inherent, you know, potential lack of choice for the matter that might turn off a few people on it, which I can understand, but I can also assure that, you know, it's not really something that is intentionally set to screw you over. I don't remember, but I think it was nominated for the category I'm about to mention during the year it came out. But what did accessibility features did had Rift Apart?
The same as the Spider-Man games, basically. It had the color mode, the different fonts, the backgrounds of the subtitles, Insomniac's recent games have all had you know, the same kind of accessibility settings that you see in Last of Us Part 2.
Okay.
Basically.
Especially because of if I remember correctly, one of the weapons returns from the 2016 remake, the Pixelator. And I know that one might be a bit, you know, a bit tough with people who might be partially visually impaired, but again, I'll need to see it again for myself eventually. We're almost there. We just need to, there you go, clean the rest of the plaza and then deal with the the result.
We're here. Now where's that fighter?
Right there in that locked garage. One tourist crashes a jet and wham! Lawsuit.
That lock is unlike any I have seen.
Very astute observation, Mr. Shiny. I can't open it either. I don't trust the tourist, and the board of directors don't trust me. So we have a little problem.
We have a little problem. I just want the O2 mask. So if you can't open up the lock, that's your problem. Now cough up the mask.
Well, I can see that you really wanted to fly our jet. So I'll tell you what. Go talk to Bob at his Robo Shack. He knows about these locks.
Well, how convenient. Sure.
I mean, I guess to his credit, Jet Fighter is not necessarily something you want just anyone being able to get, so
You also have to remember,
I get
the
locking it.
name of the game is, once again, you know, corporate business, so every opportunity to let you spend your balls.
You're up in Seattle, ain't you?
Yeah, he installed the helipack.
I can see that. I taught that idiot brother of mine everything he knows. Look, if you want some real hardware, I can fix this little
You can
fella
tell
up with
this
a
character is supposed to be an old school type
Will it
of
help
geek
us get past
because
that
he has
weird
a
box
shirt
on the
with
fighter
traditional
garage?
grey
I know
alien
about
design,
those gizmos, huh?
kind of like
That
the
sure as
comic
heck
book
will.
guy from The
It's got a
Simpsons.
real special power slam move built right in.
It's a good thing I need this to get to that jet.
Kind of
You'd be
interesting
out
how
of
the
luck,
stereotype
pal.
of the nerd really changed over the course of a few decades.
I've got it. I'll have you fixed up faster than a horny toad a hopping. Well, there you are, little buddy. Better than new.
Alright, these
That's
particular
right, I am
upgrades
the man.
will not stay consistent for most of the games. It will appear occasionally, but most of the time, Clank will just stick to the, you know, the propeller, you know, type of version. Which also, in this case, allows you to do the power slam. Again, much like we in Spyro 2 and 3, you can do basically the equivalent of the headbutt. Instead, it's just, you know, by slamming, you know, your ear. And thanks to the helmet that we acquired with on the Blarg research station, we can pilot the jet.
Hey, I remember this game from my dad's
Shoot
childhood.
down those small enemy ships to get new missiles.
Like, it's got a bit of that Galaga factor going for it with the changed ships.
About the... Well, remember, Jova, also technically speaking, the two dragons from Fireworks Factory of Spyro 3 also had this gaming. Again, it's what I keep saying, like, I can believe to an extent that, you know, Ted Price and the rest of Insomniac might have wanted to change the design, but when it comes to gameplay philosophy, this is still at its core pretty much the same as Spyro.
I honestly wonder, did they have plans for Spyro 4 in the works? But
And
you
mind
know,
you-
obviously that didn't come to fruition,
Well,
so
we
they
don't-
used a lot of those.
I don't think so, because the signs still seem to point out of a bit of a fatigue by Spyro 3, where, you know, the innovation where, you know, the animal companion buddies, you know, like Sheila, Bentley, Agent 9 and Surgeon Bird. So again, that's only up to speculation. But mind you, I don't really say this is a negative thing, because again, if a studio manages to keep maintaining a consistent level of gameplay evolution with this title, even if they change gears, you know, that's more than I can ask. It's still better than, you know, something completely different that can potentially alienate your fan base.
Then there's Final Fantasy, which kind of rebels and does something different each game. But I get it,
Also,
that's a different genre.
Not just that, if you
games.
want to be technical, it also changes the developers, because it's still developing internally, but it changes people. I'm talking about a development studio that is working for a company. Something like, say, instead of sticking to something Square adjacent, Monolith, you know, the company by Tetsuya Takahashi, you know.
Which, yeah, didn't Nintendo recently just finish purchasing Monolith?
Pretty much. It was kind of more like of a, you know, consolidation more than anything, because
It was basically just them finally officializing the marriage a few years after the marriage actually happened, basically.
It's like with, oh god, what was that other studio where they might as well have bought them already?
Next level games.
Yeah.
Next level.
Next level games, yeah.
There we go. We got our oxygen mask. Now we can finally actually dive underwater and get on the Blarg planet without having to worry about our oxygen meter. So that she's basically gone, and that usually will stick out for most of the game. I don't really think there's much of, you know, of you know, necessity to reacquire it. Maybe one or two occasion stops.
I will say, Ratchet actually looks pretty cool with the mask and Clank's wings attached.
Which it's something that will start, being implemented more with the second game, where Ratchet's appearance will actually change depending on different armor, that you can acquire for in-game purposes, and some alternate costumes that you can unlock using stuff like, potentially the equivalent of gold bolts.
Yes, because Ratchet became way less of a nudist in later games.
Yeah.
Kind of like Daxter.
Although, if I had to be honest, this classic design for Ratchet is possibly still one of my favorites. It's a bit it's a bit of a shame that for PlayStation Stars Battle Royale they did use the crank. I think it's the one, the Formula Cranking Time or All for One, which has Ratchet having a kind of a jumpsuit that honestly I don't think fits super well. But thankfully he has a bunch of alternate costumes that make his model actually stand out better.
I honestly do wonder if, like Daxter, I feel like there was a bit of a Crash Bandicoot idea with Ratchet's design here. Like, furry guy wears only pants,
I think I mentioned already, but again, I don't remember exactly when it will be showcased. But essentially, Insomniac did had a bunch of ideas when creating Ratchet, and the character went through a bunch of different designs before being finalized onto the design that it is now. Again, it's very fascinating to see the creation properly of the character. It's kind of a bit similar to how Sora came to be from Final 4 Kingdom Hearts. The first more like lion-esque appearance with the chainsaw, before the more finalized design, but still with the oversized shoes.
The oversized shoes, Nomura said that the oversized shoes were inspired by Mickey's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Like, honestly, Sora's design in KH1 feels like basically an anime take on Mickey's outfit. Like, you got the baggy pants, the giant shoes.
The prominent red collar, yeah.
And the hand proportions do look similar to what Mickey's would be like. Like, Sora got a sleeker design in future games, but I definitely do dig how he has a Mickey inspiration, which might be a reference to the fact that in one of the iterations of Kingdom Hearts, Mickey was supposed to be the playable protagonist. But yeah, no, between the likes of Ratchet and Daxter, I do feel like a lot of Sony IPs were trying to recapture the magnificent glory of Crash's design with furry guy who either wears little to nothing or eventually pants, essentially, in Daxter's case.
There's also a matter of, focus group testing the idea of, trying to understand what the market audience might like more in terms of, design, and, there will be recurring themes, even not just in the video game industry, but also media in general, on how, what might be the more ideal way of designing a character that might please the audience. And that's basically applied to everything, not just, cartoony mascots.
Very true.
Alright, the planet of the Blargs is actually possibly your first major difficulty spike, because the place is chock full of these more elite large guards with the shockwave-like attacks, but also the local wildlife and a couple of, spaceships floating around, so you need to particularly watch out. These small birds are not as they're more of an annoyance than anything. The crabs that we have dealt with, previously here a few minutes ago, those tend to be the real annoyance, because they are a bit tanky and they have slightly more reach than you can expect in terms of their attacks. So that's what you need to watch out for. I also like the fact that if you pay attention to stuff like the sky, in most of the planets there's always something going around, like a spaceship, or a bunch of flying creatures going around. It gives the idea of how lively the world is, even if it's something that you don't potentially interact. Also, yes, a lot of these crabs are just leaping, but god damn it.
There we go.
Little shit.
that'll put them to sleep permanently.
I guess. You see, they take 2 missiles to be killed. Like, what are these I guess it's because, you know, the planet is at, you know, in a state of, you know, ecological disrepair right now. That's why they are so, you know, adapted to survive.
Well, Tara, I think that's your fault, because this is a PlayStation game, and yet you're not attacking its weak point for massive damage.
That is true. Well, they're not giant, so what am I supposed to do? If it was a boss, maybe. Although, one of the later games, one of the spin-offs actually will reference the giant enemy crab meme, so we'll actually be able to see that.
Yeah.
It's kind of a shame that Astrobot actually didn't, and I don't mean... And, okay, I get that maybe the Genji IP at this point is way too obscure for people to remember outside of a specific meme, but maybe having a generic enemy posing as the giant enemy crab, I don't know.
Well, who knows?
Like,
maybe if we get
another update, who knows?
Another update, they'll throw in, or maybe they'll save it for the sequel.
I guess we have to wonder, do they consider it a gift or a curse that the game series is technically immortalized, albeit through that meme?
Well, that's the thing, Joe, but the developers do not exist anymore, you know, and I still have to actually play for myself Genji Days of Blade. I did manage to get a copy, and it's staring at me, but, you know, I haven't got it yet. Anyway, that's one of your gimmicks, premium nanotech dispenser, by, of course, paying balls. You'll be able to extend your life bar by a bit, and if you paid even more, you should be able to actually, you know, extend it fully, which will be accompanied by a small cutscene, and I think I will showcase it later, because if you paid attention to my ball count, I'm not that rich right now.
Oh god, your bank account has been drained.
And you guys always scoff at me criticizing capitalism. Alright.
Okay.
I actually also didn't mention this. The rocket with the metal wings do not really, if I have to be honest, do not really offer the much of a boost in terms of, you know, when you actually are gliding from one platform to another. It's basically the same kind of speed. But the real advantage is when you actually want to perform the super jump, either not super long jump or super high jump, you know, because it actually reacts a bit faster than the one with the propellers. And if I recall correctly, if you're not in this game, then in the next, you can actually switch between the two types at command. So, you know, at the very least, you actually have the options for that.
On the one hand, I kind of get that, you know, doing so would make it a bit OP, but I'm a bit surprised that the same developers who gave us Spyro didn't make it so that there was at least an upgrade that would allow the jetpack to practically let you fly, like, or at the very least have better aerial motion.
Some games do try to play around with the concept by having Ratchet actually find in a specific level that, you know, allows it canisters of fuel to actually, you know, fly with Clank, but it's a limited type of thing. After all, Clank, despite being multi-purpose, was not really built for long type of, you know, traversals, you know, in one go.
Remember, he's technically a defective model, so that's probably it, though. Again, I always sounded
just keep in mind, for the standards introduced here in these first couple of games, again, I know the significance that it's told in a cracking time, so, you know, for the time being, let's just stick with what these initial games offer.
Oh yeah, look, that's usually how I treat these commentaries, you know, work with the info that we have now, unless it becomes apparent that what happens in a sequel was the plan all along, essentially.
Well, again, as we mentioned, the different writers and the ones for these initial couple of games were inexperienced, you know, and with some ideas in mind, but still probably, you know, not much of an idea on how to execute them.
Like for me, it's like for me, it's two things. Like I think Crack in Time has the best story, but Rift Apart has the better character writing in general.
Huh. I'm surprised. I'd have thought you'd have thought Rift Apart had the best story altogether.
I know it has a really good story as well, but Crack in Time has that really strong emotional conclusion-y aspect to it that makes it really satisfying. Because I still really have to wonder if TJ Fixman originally envisioned that as the end.
For me,
because it feels a lot like it.
If I remember correctly, it might have been the case, but I'll have to look it up. I do remember that in a couple of occasions, a title was potentially conceived as the last major game, but basically we got the Sonic Adventure 2 effect that, you know, popularity and sales, you know, allow the series to continue anyway.
For me, it might have to be a case of how...
That and Resistance wasn't doing too hot.
Again, not to mention what happened with Fuse.
Yeah.
So, basically, when it comes to Insomniac, and mind you, this is Insomniac back then, Ratchet & Clank was kind of their lifeboat. I'm curious. Did they ever get tired of Ratchet & Clank? Like, okay, if it's to believe that they got tired with Spyro, I can only imagine how they must have felt about Ratchet &
If
Clank.
it did happen, as far as I know, they didn't really mention. I guess it helped by the fact that they changed people regularly onto who planned the game. They still had the whole 1 year cycle for a couple of times, so I can easily guess a crunch, you know, happened at some point, you know, if not very regularly. But as far as interviews are concerned, Jova, they never really gave the impression they were ever getting tired of the franchise. It's more of a case that after Into the Nexus, they basically had to, you know, take a break and work with the resources that they have for the launch of the next, you know, of the next console, which unfortunately happened to, you know, involve the launch with a movie, the remake of the first game, you know, and eventually, you know, Sony telling them to start focusing on the first Spider-Man.
I feel like for better or for worse, Insomniac are kind of becoming Sony's star studio in that regard. Like, they are the studio that will definitely motivate consumers to buy the most out of Sony's.
I argue not.
I'll argue right now Santa Monica is probably their star studio.
Hello again, everyone. Supreme Executive Chairman Drek here to fill you in on our progress. We have now found the perfect orbit for our planet, one which will allow for the optimum temperature all year round. However, there is a planet now occupying that orbit, and sadly, for its few insignificant inhabitants, it must be destroyed. That's why we've created this! The Planet Buster Maximus, a device capable of blowing an entire planet into subatomic
insert your own
particles.
compensation
We're
drug
quite
here.
proud of it. Here's how it works. We attach the Planet Buster to this ship, fly it into orbit around the planet.
Who's he even selling this to? The people he's going to kill?
I think, to be fair, with the kind of hyper-consumerism of the galaxy, you know, there you go. You know, it's not too surprising. There's a profit for everything.
Gonna blow up an entire planet? That's just mean.
That's what I've been telling you.
Look, I'm still gunning for Quark. If we end up taking out Drek too, hey, fine. What?
You do care.
Don't push it, pal.
Is that
No,
friendly side of you starting to show, Ratchet?
No, I don't.
But okay, when it comes to, you know, games that produced with a emphasis on a story and, you know, the gameplay for a more, for lack of a better term, nerd-like audience, I guess. But we have to think of a more casual type of crowd, and for that, the two IPs that are still active that I can think of would be Gran Turismo and Everybody's Golf, or Hot Shots Golf, depending on the country where you are. Because again, we have to remember that a lot of people, regardless of the country, do purchase a console just so they can play stuff like COD or FIFA, you know, very extremely type of, you know, casual gaming.
Oh, yeah.
So for that, from that matter, I can imagine, you know, those two are the ones from Sony that technically are the bigger money maker, while instead stuff like, you know, God of War, The Last of Us, or even these tend to be more, you know, geared towards, you know, the people who actually more traditional type of gaming, you know, and want to expect something from the company.
I would say we're in an age where it's equally the casual market, but also the core market that helps out with that stuff, as opposed to it being mainly the casual market. I should specify, when I'm talking Star Studio, I'm talking about the studio that brings out, like, the mega hits that aren't the casuals. Ergo, what brings the core players back in droves.
Well, if I had to be honest, Drova, even if I don't have to strictly agree with that, I had to think that possibly, even if right now there is a bit of a difference, I would say that for the longest time it has been Naughty Dog on that front. So there is that.
It was Naughty Dog for a bit. I don't know if that is nowadays, but that's probably a discussion for a whole nother time.
Anyway, tune in for the next part when we travel to Planet Hoven, as mentioned, where we have to see if we can stop the missile, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.